Welcome to Rise and Thrive with EHE Health, our new interactive weekly series featuring expert advice and conversations about all things health. Today we'll be discussing time and how to best manage it. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible. My name is Janine Bliablias. I'm the Executive Assistant at EHE Health in New York City. I've been with EHE a little over 2 years, but I've been an executive assistant for over 10. In my day-to-day life, I manage extremely hectic work lives for 3 of our senior leaders, our CEO, our CFO, and our Chief Engagement and Brand Officer. I'm always striving to make executives more efficient, organized, and productive. This includes everything from calendar management and booking their travel, making sure all their expenses are kept track of, and a myriad of other things. But that's a little bit about me, and I'd like to welcome our special guest today. We are so excited. This is Tia Brown, licensed therapist and life coach. You may recognize her from the Dr. Oz Show, CNN, MSNBC. Tia, welcome. We're so happy to have you here today. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. As you said, I'm a licensed therapist and a life coach. I'm also a journalist. I've been a journalist for quite some time, and I've written columns for an array of different magazines and newspapers. So my life has really been devoted to helping others and finding ways to give what I like to call practical life skills, ways to enhance our lives every day, because that's really what we want, the best quality of life that we can have.
Great. Thank you for that, Tia. So with your vast variety of roles, time is of the essence for you, obviously.
Absolutely.
Let us in on your secret. How do you handle it all?
You know, it's a day by day. As you see, I mean, you guys heard there was an alarm going off in the back. You know, things come up at the last minute. I'm wearing a turtleneck today, even though it's the spring, because I fell down the steps this morning trying to get some work done early.
Oh,
and
no.
so I had to readjust my whole schedule. Like I have like gay and everything on me now. Things happen. I share this to say that things happen. All we can do is learn how to, be fluid and go with the flow. Understand that most things are not going to be the end of the world, even though, sometimes right about now it feels like it. And we want to be as productive but happy as we can be. I think that that's one of the things that we forget, that we want to make sure that we're managing things that need to be done, but our happiness needs to be a priority, because our quality of life overall is the most important thing. Stress really takes a physical toll on us. So if we are thinking about what has to be done and we're focused on not being enough, right? What does that do? It stresses us out. So our goal is to be productive but happy.
That sounds great. So working from home for all of us is very new to a lot of people. Do you have any tips on how to self-motivate or get us moving into action? I know I've had some days where I don't even want to get out of my pajamas, or, how can I get past these feelings?
Yeah. Well, I like to tell my clients that before you start really thinking about time management, you want to think of it from a macro perspective first. So know your season. And what does that mean? It means we are in a culture where it's always like, go, 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 produce, do. And that's not always real for our lives, right? There are times where we need to be super highly productive, and there are times when we can be more chill. So it's super important to know what season you are before you start thinking about what kind of schedule you need to create, right? This is not television. This is not Netflix. This is our real lives. So think about, okay, what's really important for me in my life phase right now? Right? So life phase includes not just age, it also includes what's going on with your family, what's going on in the world, all environmental things, right? And that's the first thing you need to do before you decide, okay, what kind of schedule I need to make. The second thing is determine what your motivation is, right? How do I create goals for myself that are going to keep me excited and move me into action? Right? So you really want to think big picture. Assessing your needs is another important thing. What are the big things that need to be accomplished in my life at this phase? So before we go into, the logistics, the function of creating a schedule and being productive, I like to focus on the feelings behind it, right? So the macro gives you the feelings. Where am I in life right now?
I understand completely. Okay. Um, Working from home, there's so many distractions in the house. How do you suggest we handle them? I personally am lucky enough to have a basement where it's
Right.
quiet. I can tune everything out. I could basically tune out the whole world. I don't hear anything down there, but there's some people, and I don't have children or anything like that running around and trying to teach them, but a lot of people do. And there are some people trying to balance their work deadlines, and they have a house full of kids running around, and it's just hard to get past the distraction.
That's a great adjective. Hard, right? It is hard.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you did, Janine, that I think was excellent to share with the audience is give your personal information, right? Because the thing is, we like to create these blanket, I call them treatment plans, because even small things that we have to figure out for ourselves are how we're going to be efficient. It's not a one size fits all thing because everyone has different scenarios. Some people don't have a house with multiple levels. Some people do have small kids. Some people have teenagers. Some people have jobs where they're not required to do much. Some people still have to go into work. Some people have a laid off family member or loved one, right? So there's so many different stressors and factors that it's not a one size fits all thing. When you are working from home, I think the key thing to figure out is, number one, how productive do you need to be? What needs to be accomplished for your job to be safe and for you to feel like my boss will be satisfied or my team will be satisfied and I can support them? So one of the things that's great to do with that is figure out how I create a space in order to be my most productive self. Now that will look different depending on your resources. Some people their space may have to be the bathroom, For others, the space may be able to be a basement, or it might be a bedroom, it might be a closet. One of the other things I suggest is, bribe the people you love to get them on your team, right? If you have kids, it's not realistic to expect them to be quiet all day. You might have to give them some extra candy. You might have to give them cake. You might have to let them watch TV or play a video game to keep them occupied, especially during the core times. If you have a significant other who is working or isn't working, you may have to do some negotiating and bartering there to make sure, you kind of passing the baton with responsibilities and duties. So the biggest thing is to, number one, assess how highly functioning you need to be to perform well at your job, support your team, support your supervisor. Two, learn how to bribe the people in your household to help them become, more enlisted in supporting you and getting that done. And my last one is understand that this is a chaotic time. Right? So you can't expect things to go perfectly all the time. Things will not be great. Like you hear this alarm still chirping in the background. Things happen. You have to be okay with things not being perfect.
We've all seen like the reporters on TV and their kids were just running behind them, or they're
cats fighting in the background. Things are going to happen because everyone is stressed. People are in confined spaces. We don't have our normal outlets. You can't go out to a jog. You can't go walk the mall, which is one of my favorite hobbies. You can't go to an exercise class. You have to be indoors. So you have to be able to accept that things won't be perfect, but that does not mean they can't be good. So it's really about a perspective change on what my expectation is for how happiness will look during this time period. And last but not least, I want to remind folks, this is a marathon. It's not a race. We do not know when our new normal becomes the old normal. Most likely there will be another iteration of this new normal. We probably won't go back to days of old. So it's good to start thinking about how I can be happy with different things going on in my life. Because that tool, that flexibility is going to serve us well in the next few years.
Isn't that the truth? So with everyone juggling their work and their home life at the same time, how do you distinguish which tasks take priority? For me, it could be a bit overwhelming for everyone, but for me as an executive assistant, you quickly learn just by being around the executive what takes priority. If I could have 20 tasks that day, but if an urgent matter comes up, I drop everything and just make sure that matter is taken care of. But how would you distinguish which tasks take priority now that we're all working from home?
Well, I think, Janine, you just gave a perfect practical life skill tip. It's deciding the musts versus the good tos. And that's how I usually tell people to decipher their list. What must be done today versus what would it be good to do, you know? And sometimes,
maybe.
right. Sometimes you might have to juggle things around. Things may become a bigger priority or a lesser priority. And the reality is that some days you won't get everything that even is a must done. But I think the first step is really understanding, like, you know, if there are 10 things that have to be done, what are the 5 that have to be done first to make sure that other things move forward linearly, right? And if you can get to the other 5, that's good. Now, the other thing that people have to be mindful of, some days are just going to be terrible, horrible, long, stressful, right? So some days there'll be 15 must items. Right? So if you have to get all 15 done, that's a day that you have to, you know, put your big girl panties on, the big boy boxers on, and power through, right? But those are the times you want to remember, you know, the weekend that you spent on your couch watching Netflix binge, right? The days you walked around, you know, at the fair or the amusement park and did nothing, the week-long vacations. And remember that there will be a time when you get to chill out again.
Let's hope.
It will happen. Life is always ebbs and flows. It's rarely at a 10 forever, right? Yeah. Even if it feels like that in the moment. That's why it's so important for us to use our memory to go back to how resilient we have been in the past and the things we have been able to accomplish. And you're like, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, it felt like it was the end of the world, but it wasn't, you know?
It's true. So a large part of my job as being an executive assistant is to make sure calendars are in order for our senior executives. And these calendars are packed crazy. But how do you suggest we utilize our calendars for more than work purposes? Should we be scheduling breaks, time for eating lunch, time to make phone calls? What do you suggest we do?
Absolutely. I think you should have a calendar or a list that's in sync with personal and professional. Here's why. If you put some things in one calendar and then other things in another calendar, unless you are super type A, you may accidentally mess up with the booking, right? You may book dinner the time you have a late meeting that one day, or, you know, a kid's birthday party, you know, something will get messed up. Now, the most important thing to do is to figure out what type of calendar system you need. Some people like it on their phones. Some people like it, you know, on laptops. Some people like to actually write it down and or have it up on the wall. So figure out your system in terms of how you're going to display your information. And then what I suggest is, yes, to scheduling in special time, not only just special time for yourself, but if you have a mate, if you have children, if you have loved ones that you know you need to spend quality time with, periodically putting in things for that, but also differentiating between personal and professional with a consistent style. What works for me is pretty easy is doing like all caps for personal stuff and regular font for professional stuff. So I know, okay, this is a priority if I have time with my significant other, or if I'm going to a relative's birthday party, or, well, you're not going to any birthday parties now, but if there's going to be a birthday Zoom, you know, or drinks, I think that it really serves you well to also understand what is fully going on in your day, right? And your week. Because that also allows us to think about, okay, am I overscheduling myself? Mm-hmm. What can I change around? What can I maybe postpone? You know, what should I put to the next week? You know, and it gives you time to have preparation. You know, so if there's a project and you're like, oh my gosh, I have this project on Wednesday, but I know Tuesday night, you know, there's a family dinner. I need to get that project done on Monday.
Right.
You know, so it really gives you the ability to feel like you're in control, even when we know we're not always in control of things.
I meet with the executives that I assist every day, and we go through the weekly calendar, sometimes 2 weeks ahead, and we say, oh, what's this? We got to push that off. This takes priority. So I know what you're saying.
Right. And doesn't it feel so much better when it's like, I haven't sandwiched myself in with boom, 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 boom,
yeah.
You know, 3 or 4 big things.
Yeah, we get so excited. We're like, oh, look, you have like a 2-hour gap. You can, like, you know, just do work. We actually block time off in the calendars to actually do work because their calendars are so crazy. They don't have time to work.
And I think that's also very important. I think a lot of times people don't allocate enough time for a specific task. So if you have a project due, it's not just about, okay, this is the project deadline. It's when do I do the work for this project?
Right.
You know, if you have, you know, just like if you were in college, if you had a paper, it's not just the day the paper's due, it's the time that I need to research. It's the time that I need to type it up or do whatever notes. So making sure that you allocate the time for preparation and to do the other work you need is super important.
I agree. So I'd like to touch on multitasking. For me personally, I multitask all day long. It's just part of my job. For instance, I'm always answering emails throughout the day, even if I'm working on another project. But for someone perhaps in a different field, multitasking may not be necessary. Can you talk about like stop and go throughout your workday and how you feel about that?
Right. I think you hit it on the nose, Janine. I mean, as you're a core team player, so you get this, right? Some things you will have to multitask, right? There are some jobs that require, you know, several balls being up in the air at one time. But, you know, over the last decade or so, you know, there's been like such a huge thing in being like a multi-hyphenate and having all of these things going on, and really giving as much as you can to your job when it's not always necessary. When we're thinking of day-to-day tasks, I think it's stronger for most people and in most cases to start a task and complete it, check it off the list. Now, that's not always going to be feasible. There will be some things that you need to do a little bit of stop and go. But having a consistent schedule where you are doing task mastery is such a huge ego booster, right? When I just checked this off, I got this done, it relieves so much stress versus having 6 things that are partially done, right? So you have to decide for your specific career though, which way works best, because for some people it's just not possible. Like if you're part of a team where you may have 6 projects going, your task master, your multitasking may have to be quantified into smaller pieces. So it might not be I finished the whole thing, it's I finished this portion of it and that's the check off, right? So it's still multitasking, but it has some finite aspects. So really figure out what works best for you.
Great advice. So since we all have so much going on in our lives right now, how do we reward ourselves or give ourselves incentives for success? We can't go into a store and like buy our favorite whatever, you know, shoes or a handbag. I mean, you know, there's always online shopping, but I
Not
feel
the same rush.
yeah, you like touch it in the store. Yeah. You know, perhaps we can get like a 4:30 p.m. glass of wine or something. I would personally love a glass of rosé right now, but
it's 1:18.
My day's not over yet. So
Right.
like, what kind of incentives should we give ourselves for, you know, our success?
First tip for incentives is that it has to be true to you, right? It has to be something that makes you happy and makes you smile the way you just smiled when you mentioned rosé. Because if it's something that, you know, a therapist says or a coach says that doesn't feel good, you're not going to be motivated to work towards that reward. But there are lots of different things that don't have to be indulgences, you know, that can be incentives. For example, it could be watching movies. You know, like I love watching funny movies. It's a great de-stressor for me. So I watch like Scary Movie or I watch an Adam Sandler movie, and that'll be my reward after grinding out for a couple of hours. But it makes me feel good. Right? For some people, it will be exercise. And I know that exercise is really challenging now. I'm a person who loves going to exercise classes and, you know, I can't do that anymore. So you have to figure out how you exercise with the resources that we have. So I take long walks, you know, so you have to figure out the things that make you happy and make you feel full. Another thing that I suggest to folks is sometimes carving out time to talk to people who you haven't caught up with. Right? So we do a lot of texting, we do a lot of emailing, evites, we do Zooms, but there's something very intimate about those one-on-one phone calls. And so if there's someone that you've been meaning to connect with, the one-on-one phone call might be a great way to have like that little, I'll have like that 30-minute call with my aunt, my dad, you know, grandma, the kid who's away and you know, social distanced gentrifier somewhere, you know, so figure out the things that feel true to you. If it's ordering something from Amazon and it's in your budget, go ahead, treat yourself, you know, enjoy it. If it's the glass of rosé, treat yourself. but you just don't want to be overly indulgent with things that have the potential to be maladaptive coping mechanisms. So what does that mean? If I'm stressed and I have to do all of this work and I want to fix afterwards, one glass of wine might be nice, but I might start doing 3 or 4, right? And that becomes too much. One pair of shoes might be okay once a week or maybe once a month. I don't know how frequent. But if you're doing it every day because you're looking for that pick-me-up because you can't self-regulate, that's when it becomes maladaptive. So it's just super important when we're giving ourselves external things to make sure that we're in that balance, that it's a healthy coping mechanism, a healthy reward.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Tia. We have some Q&A here if you want to answer some questions. Any productivity apps you would recommend?
I'm not a big app person, to be honest. So I don't have any apps that come to mind. Usually I'm in my phone, and I really just use the planner. What I found is the more things that I have going on, it's like the same stuff in different spaces. So I keep it pretty simple.
Great, thanks. What can I do outside the workday to make me more productive during it?
What can I do outside the workday? So the number one thing is getting good sleep.
I agree.
If you are not rested, and this is something that people are not talking about enough, because we're at home, because we're stressed, a lot of people's sleep schedules are drastically off. They're staying up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, or even not getting sleep at all, or sleeping long periods of time. So trying to get a healthy amount of sleep, the 8 hours that's suggested, is number one. Number two, figuring out how to exercise in some way. If you are in your apartment or a house, you're not getting anywhere near the 10,000 steps that people recommend giving, experts recommend, and you're definitely not necessarily doing, more robust exercising that's going to get, your blood pumping and burn some calories and burn some of that stress energy. So if you can find a way to walk around, get your 10,000 steps in, and also exercise, it will make your workday way more productive. And last but not least, I would say making sure that you're eating well. I have also gained, we call it the freshman 15 when you're in college. I don't know what we're going to call it. I gained pandemic pounds. Okay? We're calling it pandemic pounds.
The quarantine 15 or something.
Right, quarantine 15. So I've had to be way more mindful of balancing, treating myself, because it's right there, especially when there are kids around. There's tons of snacks. We have cake and cookies and chips, and so then you have to add and make sure you're adding in the fruit in the house, fresh fruit, add in vegetables for your dinner. You want to make sure that you're doing things to make sure you have as balanced of a diet as possible, because we're not burning calories, we're not burning energy the same way. And weight gain, well, not only can be unhealthy, but it also makes us lethargic. And so that affects how we're performing when we're doing our day-to-day tasks.
Great advice. Really, really great advice. Another question here. Any tips for managing a full inbox after a day off, or even a week, like one day, but what about a week? I'll come back to 900 emails. It's crazy.
That's crazy. And everyone deals with it. Because we have these smartphones, a lot of people are checking their email while they're off, and it's a habit that we shouldn't keep. So I think be happy if you have a full inbox. That's number one. That means that you're needed. But the best thing to do is really allocate time to just knock them out. Right. So normally what I would do when I come back from a vacation is I set aside maybe an hour or two, depending on the volume, put on some music and just go through the email in reverse. Well, I guess it's real chronological order, but reverse meaning not the day we're here, but from the bottom. Why? Because we end up missing things. You can't understand what's going on. You don't know the request. So you have to start from your last day and go back to current day. Now there will always be things that are priority, right? And usually people will kind of give it an asterisk or a highlight, or you've received a call about that. But otherwise, just set aside time and know that this is going to be a task for you to do and get it done. Now, another cheat is, and this depends on how much time you want to give your job, is actually coming in a little bit early the day you come back, right? Because if you decide that I'll come in an hour or two early, chill out and just go through your email, by the time your day starts, you're actually in a great place because you're all caught up. And when people are hitting you with calls, you know, you can kind of jump right in. Right. But it really depends on, you know, the volume of email you have, if there are any, you know, projects that are really pertinent, and really if it's needed.
I know I've checked like my email, like let's say I go back to work on a Monday, on Sunday night, I'm on email because I need to know what I'm walking into the next
day. Because it's stressful when you are trying to literally multitask what's going on when you're not caught up. And then as happy as people are, quote unquote, when you have your vacation, people aren't particularly sympathetic. Come back, right? They're like, oh great, you were, you know, well nowadays in your basement. Welcome back online. You know, this is what I need. Because, and it's not necessarily selfish, right? People just really need to, you know, want to be as productive as they can possibly be. So we have to be considerate to those folks as well. So figuring out, again, every situation is not the same, but if you have a situation where you have a job that requires high production, I would suggest logging on early so you can get the emails out the way before that new day starts. If not, take, you know, say your hellos, check in, and then allocate an hour or two to go through those emails in bulk. So you'll be all caught up and you can just start moving forward.
That's great advice, and advice that I already take. So I agree. It works.
Yeah, it does.
We have a couple more questions here. So all of this is great advice, but how do I hold myself accountable to actually set these goals and achieve them?
Start. That's all you can do, because there will be times when you disappoint yourself and there'll be times when you win, right? You have to determine what your motivation is for success, excuse me, and consistency. But you won't know until you start. Even if you fumble doesn't mean, no, I don't do this anymore. No, I don't do time management. I don't do calendars. They don't work. It means, you know, I messed up. It's the same concept as dieting versus an eating lifestyle, exercise versus an exercise lifestyle. You have to decide that this is a way of life for me now. So even when I mess up, and there'll be times we're stressed, you know, there are a lot, depending on what's going on in your household, some days you just need to unplug. You know, I like to remind people it's okay to be sad. A lot of times we want to run away from sadness. We want to run away from these like mini breakdowns. But if we don't engage those and accept those, what happens is we'll just have bigger breakdowns later. So you may have a day, a week, 2 weeks, you know, that you're just like, oh, I've been so out of it. I'm just maintaining. And that makes me feel like I'm a terrible person. No, sometimes all you can do is float, you know, but you have to decide that I'm going to push myself to start swimming again. So if you haven't been successful at time management, start again.
It's so great to you. Okay, working from home, I feel like I'm expected to always be on my computer and be responsive. That's true. How can I approach my management and explain these time management tips and have them understand my need to shut down sometimes and step away so that I can have some personal time? You know, we're all home.
Yeah.
We have our laptops, our phones with us all the time, but how do you disconnect? You know, I'm answering emails sometimes at 8 o'clock at night because I feel like I'm home. I'm not doing anything else. Why not?
Right. People would love to hear me say, just don't do it, right? The reality is that that's not always the case. If you have a job where corporate culture is you're on, if you do not engage in corporate culture, you most likely will not still be at that job. That's just the reality. However, there are ways to train your boss, right? So you can delay response times for things that are not urgent when hours are off, right? So if your core hours are 10 to 6 and corporate culture, maybe your boss is emailing you at 8, 9 o'clock, you can not be available until a little bit later, or the next morning, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, my phone was down, you know, my phone was off, or I was at dinner, or my phone was in another room. So you're slowly training your boss to not expect you to respond all the time. But again, the first thing is you have to know your corporate culture and whether or not it is expected of you to kind of work beyond your 40 hours for the contract. During the day, I want to address the other part. When you're home, it's very easy to kind of feel like you're in vacation mode / home mode, but you're working all day. So if your boss is emailing you between 10 and 6, and I've had clients say this, like my bosses want to Zoom constantly to check in. Well, if you were at work and your boss wanted to be in a meeting, you would do it. You know, being at home doesn't give you the luxury to say no, right? So there is an expectation that during those hours you will be on, and you need to go with the flow of what it means to be on during that time. Here's another thing about managing bosses. You have to think about their own personal situation. Is your boss stressed? Is your boss looking to perform a certain way because his or her job is on the line, or the team is on the line of being cut? Is your boss busy, right? Some bosses are way more committed to work, and work feels a different hole in their life than it does for other people. So understanding your boss's situation and how you manage that will also help you have more job fulfillment.
Thank you, Tia. I got one more question here. How do you deal with boring or repetitive tasks? They could be entering something into, a system, number after number.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the first thing that came to my mind. But how would you deal with that?
So for me, I usually suggest music or a comedy series, right? It depends on how much focus you need to have during that. So if it's something where, even though it's repetitive, you need to really pay attention, you can put on like meditation music in the background that's like spa, like it gives you like the Zen zone and you're chilling out. If it's something where it's super simple, repetitive, put on your favorite playlist and just rock out to it, or put on a comedy show, like Pandora has all of these lists, and, iTunes has lists of different comedians. It's something that you can listen to and engage in, but you don't have to watch. You can still watch your work screen. Another thing is, like, if you have a favorite TV show that it's fun to just listen to, like I love The Office. And because I am a super fan, I know all of the visuals, so yeah. I can listen to The Office and still enjoy it.
Yeah, and you know what the next line is going to be.
Right. But it's something that helps you really like make that moment fun. I think the biggest thing is finding enjoyment in the things that you like doing, the things you have to do. So whatever kind of music it is or stimulus it is, just engage in that. It might be a podcast. It might be a time or a book, or an audio book. Mm-hmm. So do something that makes it easier for you to look forward to that repetitive task because you want to get back to it.
Yeah. That is great advice. So I don't see any more questions. So I guess we're going to wrap it up for today. Tune in next week for a discussion on return to work safety. Also be sure to follow EHE Health on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram for additional content. Tia, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation today. We've learned so much and appreciate all your time. If our viewers have any further questions or would like to reach out to you directly, can you let us know how we can do that?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you guys for having me, and thank you for sharing so much of yourself with us, because I think it's great when people hear real life anecdotes, and how people are problem solving, and you have a very high pressure job. So kudos to you on that. Yeah. If folks want to follow me, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Tia Brown Talks, TIABROWN Talks, TALKS. And I'm at rsgtherapy.com if you're interested in therapy or coaching. RSG, that's Ready, Set, Grow, therapy.com.
Great. Thank you, Tia.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Take care.